Welcome back to another episode of Prairie Ramblings. We have our third episode for the podcast, which is really exciting. Things have shifted, things have changed, lots has been going on in my life. So it's taken me a bit to get to our third podcast, but it is worth the wait, and it's a really good episode, and I'm really excited to share it with everybody. I went to just north of Lawrence, just by the KU field station, up over by the airport, that side of town. If you're familiar with Lawrence, it was really awesome. This week we're spotlighting my friend Courtney Masterson and her partner Ryan. Courtney has a native company, like a native plant company called Native Lands LLC, and she and her team do really awesome prairie restoration work throughout Kansas, and it is so awesome. I've done some volunteer days with her before. We worked at the 8th Street boat ramp, or 6th Street, something like that, and it was so much fun. I also got together with her during one of my classes at KU. We were also at the 8th Street boat ramp, and then I've done some work with her here and there just around the Lawrence and Kansas City metro area. But super awesome work that they're doing. I got to walk around their land a little bit, and they moved there recently, which we'll kind of talk about in the podcast, and it's really awesome. And today's nature sound is pretty cool. The first one is Courtney walking around this pond. You can kind of hear her walking, but that bright chirp is actually the sound of bullfrogs jumping from the shoreline in the really low water area out into the pond. And then the last one, I think most will pretty well recognize the sound, but the second one actually is incorporated with a video. So I will post that video on my Instagram along with some other photos that I took during this, during this podcast. So yeah, thanks for hanging out, and I hope that everybody will enjoy this lovely episode of Prairie Ramblings. I'll talk to you soon. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in again. Today I am pleased to introduce my intelligent plant friends Courtney and Ryan. They're two awesome people who have been doing some awesome prairie restoration work here in Kansas. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, Amy.
Yeah. So we just had the pleasure of walking around your land.
Yeah.
And beautiful. Checking it out with your lovely dog Badger. Collecting some seeds. Yeah. So maybe we could just start by talking about how you got to this land that we're on and that process.
Oh, well, we've been sort of shopping for land for a really long time, but I think the way everybody does, where it's like winter and you start dreaming about, what's the next stage of being a grown-up and how to protect more prairie, because that's what we care about.
Yeah.
Buying up and protecting land in a natural state. This piece of land was a surprise, and the owners started trying to sell it before the COVID-19 lockdown started. We came out and toured it in February of this year. And I specialize in seed collection, and so I recognized what all the plants were, even though everything was cold and gray and brown.
Yeah.
And I said, Ryan, I think there's prairie here. And
Oh my gosh.
and she was, I said, oh, well, do you have some wildflowers here sometimes? She's like, oh, there's a few. And, we don't spend a ton of time back here anymore. And I was like, oh, okay. Just playing it cool.
Yeah.
But then we started to pursue it, and the market was crazy still, surprisingly. So our house sold really fast, and we bought this up really fast and had to have everything packed and moved in, like a month.
Yeah.
And moved in the middle of that lockdown, which was crazy.
Yeah.
Dealt with banks in the middle of the lockdown and moving crews in the middle of the lockdown. Totally crazy.
Yeah. Never been done and seen before.
No.
Right.
Everybody's first time.
Yeah.
And so we have just been watching this place sort of unfold since then, and good surprises, strange surprises, challenges, but all kinds of wonderful things and, things to add to the to-do list. But we love it here. It hasn't been that long, and I already feel like this is our home. We know this land really well. It's really great being here and imagining it kind of in its natural state, working on getting back to that natural state.
Yeah, totally. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it is really beautiful. Ryan's a quiet type. He'll get there.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have some time.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it was cool to see this time of year. I mean, September 22nd already.
I know.
How?
Right.
I know.
But, it's cool to see the different flowers that have come up.
Yeah.
I mean, goldenrod right now is one of my favorites.
So
and
pretty.
I really love it, and it's really great. And,
We have 5 species of goldenrod on the land.
I didn't know that there was
Yeah.
5 species.
I should have told you all about them.
What species?
We have grassleaf goldenrod and rigid goldenrod, Canada goldenrod, Missouri goldenrod, and gray goldenrod.
Oh my gosh.
I know. They're all part of a complete prairie. Very important plants.
Okay, cool. I'm so happy because they're a favorite plant of mine around here.
There's so many great goldenrods.
Yeah.
Don't we have elm leaf goldenrod?
Elm leaf?
I haven't seen
Okay.
it.
Oh, okay.
We might have elm leaf goldenrod. It's a woodland goldenrod.
Right.
Okay.
I didn't see it today.
Okay.
But
But, I
It
mean,
could
if
be
you have
magic.
5 other species, I have a
We
feeling
probably-
that elm leaf is here.
And the forest, we live really near the KU field station and their preserves out here, and their forest preserve is just 3 tracts of land down the road, and I know they have elm leaf goldenrod there, so
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if we have it here.
Yeah.
They would have been connected
Yeah.
historically. So.
The drive-in was very reminiscent for me, being a student that's gone to the field station and gone to those different prairie centers.
Yeah.
And I remember, I wasn't a part of the burn, but I remember seeing the little flame bundles and smoke, but everybody was gone, and it was just whatever, it was no big deal, and I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
It was on the roadside, and it was it was a leaf burning, you
Yeah.
know? And we're like, oh my gosh, flame,
Yeah.
I was with my class, so everybody was freaking out.
Yeah.
But, it was really cool to see that, because I saw that maybe a year or 2 ago when it was being burned.
Yeah.
And then seeing it this year, I mean, there was still a lot of plants that were just oh, you're still here, but, it could be a lot worse.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And
Yeah. We do a lot of burning with our business, and to help people learn how that sort of, it's really like an ancient land management technique, that we've sort of stepped too far away from, and so now we have sort of a fear of using fire as a tool to manage grasslands, but that's something that we spend a lot of time training people to do. And
Yeah.
so I think we have 20 or 30 burns scheduled to do with landowners this year.
Cool.
And usually some more pop up unplanned, but it's something that we love doing. It's thrilling, but it's also regenerative and renewing. It's cleansing, and it's a really cool way to see prairie. You just got buzzed by a hummingbird.
Hummingbird! Oh my gosh, there
We have
is
a
a
ton.
feeder here.
Yeah.
Yay!
They fight. There's a lot of them. But it's a really cool way to see the topography of your land, because prairie does a really good job of hiding the rolling hills and wallows and wet spots and deer bones and all kinds of cool stuff. So we love to burn.
Yeah, it's the best time.
And that's what we're most looking forward to with the land in the coming season. We haven't done a fall here yet, so we're excited.
And I feel like this year's we're gonna have a good fall.
I hope so.
Mm-hmm.
It feels
it.
so good.
I feel it.
I know, it feels amazing outside.
A few weeks ago, though, it was a little nerve-wracking when it was like, I wore my coveralls to the farm, and I was like...
It was like in the 50s.
Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't...
In August.
These weren't ready.
Yep.
These weren't ready for me to be worn yet, and here I am.
Yeah, I was
have
so
to.
excited. We both love fall. We love hoodie weather. And so I was ready. I was like packing my summer clothes away, getting out the sweaters, and then it got hot again.
Yeah, classic Kansas, you know,
Kansas.
it's just how it works.
It's so true.
Yeah. So how has the business, the native land business, I know just from the internet seeing, you know, you had to stop some volunteer days, things like that, but how else moving forward have things been affected with that side of things? Like, are you set back a lot?
No, I mean, we're busy. We're always busy. I get a lot of friend-to-friend referrals or client-to-friend referrals.
Yeah.
And because we work outside, it only slowed us down for a little while. The things that have been hardest have been, like, we work pretty great distances. I mean, we have jobs as far out as, like, Miami County, so that's like an hour and 10 minutes drive for people who aren't familiar. Yeah. It's still on the Missouri-Kansas state line, but it's near Johnson, like just below Johnson County. And then we have jobs all the way on the other side of Topeka, and so we're often driving over an hour to work, and not being able to carpool with our team is hard. I don't really like the idea of us all driving separately, plus you lose that camaraderie, you lose that team building time.
Yeah. Especially for an hour and a half drive. It's like,
Right.
eventually someone will say something.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
And you know, it's, you can't go into someone's house to use the bathroom, you can't pop into somewhere for lunch really easily. So I think any organization that works out in the field all day kind of gets that. I mean, even though we aren't set back in business as much, our day-to-day operations are greatly changed, the day can't be as long. You know, we don't get quite as much work done. Our clients are nervous about us being there, even though they, you know, we're invited, obviously, but we don't get to have that sort of relationship building time with our clients either. And so, you know, you lose the people part of it, which is a bummer. We're educators, and so and I haven't been able to teach really, you know that. And it's been tough losing that part of it, because I think we do this work because we care really greatly about returning the native ecosystems to the land, but also the education is what makes it sustainable, and makes us feel rewarded for what we do, that we're changing a mind or opening a heart, you know, with every conversation.
Yeah.
It's
It keeps it going.
Yeah.
Share it.
Yeah. Sharing what we do and why it's important.
Yeah.
And so, losing the community work days when this first started happening was difficult. And now we're starting to do them again, but with masks on. And, you know, you notice smaller volunteer groups, and that's just people don't feel comfortable gathering even outside. And, of course, we adhere to all of the regulations. But we don't feel as comfortable, you know, hobnobbing with people and things that we used to do as partnerships out in the field, volunteers partnering together. You can't do that kind of stuff. So it just feels a little more sterile.
Yeah.
Sterile intentionally and figuratively.
Yeah.
It'll get better though.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not going to stop doing what we do.
You can't.
No. It's way too good. It's way too important.
Yeah.
And so, but we also thoroughly recognize that most people, especially small businesses, have just been upended by this. And so we try to still support our fellow small businesses, local farmers. I mean, we're all experiencing it in some way. if nothing else, it's just exhausting. I think mentally exhausting.
Oh my gosh.
Like, everybody's so tired,
Yeah.
mentally tired, you know?
Yeah.
So.
The state of the world is just hard. And
Yes.
we don't have to go too in depth with this topic if you don't want
Yeah.
to, but like it is difficult, and especially when, as like people, like earth stewards, you know, when we're trying to give back to the land and, you know, provide these resources and do good things to the earth and the environment that we're around, and then to hear about things like the forest fires. I
Yeah.
mean, that's heavy on everybody's hearts. I mean, seeing the smoke haze in Topeka, it was spotted in Topeka.
yeah.
I feel like it was in Lawrence.
I
Oh,
feel
yeah.
like, I mean, we have this, you can't see it, listeners, but we have this view.
Yeah.
And you can tell when the sun rises in the morning over our bed, it's different right now. It's really, really hazy. The color is different. I haven't noticed, and I don't think any of our team members have reported any kind of trouble breathing or, you know, a change in the way that they
Yeah.
breathe. But you notice it. I mean, the sky is different.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine how they feel. And we were in Colorado last week, but we were in the southeast corner of Colorado, like the least affected corner.
Yeah.
But I mean, you still notice it
Yeah.
in the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually I also was recently in Colorado, but I was in Fort Collins, and there
Oh,
was a forest
different.
fire
Oh, yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
And I actually had dust particles or ash particles on my car. And I was
scary.
like, when I was driving away, it was just like poof, you know, it was all like flying
Yeah.
off. And
Wow.
it was noon, and I could easily stare at the sun.
Yeah.
It's like,
pretty
this is
uncomfortable.
really
Yeah.
hazy. You couldn't have your, like, I was staying with two people, and they, you know, quarantined pretty well, so I felt comfortable staying with them. And they were telling me, you know, we can't have our windows open anymore. They don't have an AC unit.
Oh,
and it was like
uncomfortable.
100 degrees. This was like right before it was like 100 degrees, and then like 50 or 40
Right.
degrees, which is just like, haha, climate change.
Yeah.
You know?
Mhm.
And so it was, we couldn't have the windows open, and if we did, even when it was really hot, we'd just like start coughing and getting sneezy. And sometimes when I go near the mountains and just like in that drier air, I do get a little sneezy.
Yeah.
But this was like particles in my like throat, like
Yeah.
like I could feel something a little bit, and it was just like, oh, this is hard, you know. And it's hard because we're also in this virus pandemic that heavily involves your lungs
Yeah.
and those parts of your body, and then to have this come up, it's just ironic,
Right.
you know.
It's too much all at once for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think we're lucky here. It'll be interesting as the Midwest goes through our burn season, how people will respond. It's always been a controversial thing, unfortunately. But I get it. I get both perspectives, obviously. But, you know, usually when we have ash in the air here or when there's a haze over the sun, it's because we're burning large tracts of prairie. And that's supposed to happen. But it's just
Yeah.
for a couple days a year, and we're all going to be okay.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see how, like, your relation between sort of the wildfires and COVID in Colorado. We're going to be going through a very similar thing on purpose here. And it'll be interesting to see how our state administration deals with that. Hoping that land managers are still going to be able to use that important tool. Otherwise, it could put us in a dangerous spot for wildfires. I mean, we have to burn. It's a protection for us. And so, if nothing else, it's a lot of things, but it protects us from unplanned fires. So hopefully they will still let us burn.
Yeah. I didn't ever think about that, but I'm glad you did and are like thinking of those things before you have to burn a lot of places.
Hopefully it's a non-issue. Or it's something that they think about afterwards and they don't stop us. But I mean, when they burn Kanza, when you're burning thousands of acres of prairie, that's something that, you know, the state feels. And it'll be interesting to see how the public and our policymakers respond to that.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of like state policy, federal, that side of things, I know last time we talked, which was quite a while ago, but we were working on the riverbank, the 6th Street.
8th Street boat
8th
ramp.
Street boat ramp.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, 6th Street, 8th Street. 8th Street boat ramp project.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a grant or some sort of like money.
Mm-hmm.
How's that been going on because of everything? Is that still in the, like, I saw the sign. It was really great. I biked over
the
there.
kiosk.
I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's cool. That project wrapped up and at the end of June.
Oh, okay.
And so it was a 2-year project, and we had funding for that. And so really the virus only disrupted the last sort of quarter of the project. It was still kind of heartbreaking because we wanted to do so much to celebrate with the community that we weren't able to do. But we achieved more than we thought that we would. And
Great.
We had hundreds of volunteers and students involved, and some really great collaborations with local organizations. And it was a dream. And since then we've taken on a couple more projects that are similar to that. One of them is the Blackjack Battlefield and Nature Park restoration. We're doing some prairie plantings and prairie restoration out there. That's in Baldwin City. And then we're doing, with Friends of the Caw, we're partnering with them again. We are doing a Eudora boat ramp restoration. So we'll be doing a prairie planting there and restoring the forest along the Wakarusa River there.
Cool.
And a bunch of other little things. So I was at Piper High School today. We're doing a little forest cleanup and wildflower planting with their students, and working with Kansas Land Trust and at Lawrence Nature Park next spring.
Mm-hmm.
There's all kinds of things coming up, and all of them involve community interaction and hopefully a lot of hands-on volunteer days. With masks and safely, of course.
Yeah.
But hopefully it'll go really well. And we're talking; these are 2-year projects, so I really hope that by the time we talk again about these projects wrapping, that the virus and the way we have to be separate from each other is really different for everybody.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll see.
Yeah, I've even noticed just a change in like who's interested. I mean, I don't do as much as you do, but I've done just little projects here and there, and I've just reached out and been like, hey, anyone want to join? And there's been a lot of previous people in the past have been like, oh my gosh, yeah. And even, it's just like not even, like most people either have a lot, I feel like a lot of people have a lot going on right now.
Yeah.
And then also just, don't feel comfortable or don't want to go out and do it. And, that's totally okay. And I do think that we will get to a point of breaking through that little seal that we're in and continuing that education, because I feel like it's very important for all of it. And it's definitely important for like human nature in general.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And getting outside and having that outside environmental education is a really important part in like it in a lot of people's lives.
I think so too. And I just met with the Kansas Suicide Prevention Headquarters. I don't know if you know about them. They're in East Lawrence. Fantastic people. And they're starting to organize work days, volunteer days to get the people involved with them out into nature as a form of therapy. And I've been talking with them about how we can support their work. They've been thinking about focusing on cleaning up the Burroughs Creek corridor because they back up to the Lawrence Loop as it follows Burroughs Creek. And that's been sort of a pet project of ours and our collaborators for a long time. We've been trying to find funding to restore sort of wetland and riparian vegetation along that corridor.
Yeah.
It's almost all invasive and non-native species and a lot of poison ivy. And it has to be disturbed a lot because of the way that it's managed by the Parks Department. They mow it and dredge it.
Yes.
And so we really want to put a more sustainable, a more permanent, perennial ecosystem there that belongs there.
Yeah.
That'll also serve water quality and wildlife. So we've been working on that for a couple of years, and haven't had any luck finding funding yet, but we're working on it. It was kind of wonderful to hear from the Suicide Prevention Headquarters because it's a great way for us to collaborate in a very low cost but big impact way with a group of people who need it more than anybody,
Yeah.
to come back to nature. Such a healing thing.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of friends that have started to do like nature education, or what is it? Like forest therapy, kind of? Maybe
Yeah.
that's the word?
Yeah.
I don't know. That kind of thing, like what you're talking about is with
Like
folks.
forest bathing. kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
well, not that, but it's more like young kids that are maybe not doing so great at home, maybe, are just quote unquote troubled, they may call them.
Yeah.
And just getting them outside. Maybe they're like inner city kids that have like never walked on a trail.
Yeah.
Who knows? There's a huge diverse population like that.
Absolutely.
And it's just some of my friends that are very comfortable. They live in like the Carolinas, and there's really great hiking around there. And they'll just take them on a 3-day weekend trip and just go camping with them and just show them nature and just kind of like be like, hey, it's really great out here.
Right.
That's awesome.
Like this is a really safe place to be.
Yeah.
And you are awesome. Like your life is great.
Yeah. And this is, you're part of this. The separation from nature, I think, is one of our biggest illnesses as a species, is feeling like we don't belong in it, And similarly, there's similar work to what you're describing being done in Kansas City. There's a group of people that I call my friends anyway. I think they're my friends. Greenworks KC. They bring, urban KC Mo kids out into nature and teach them all these wonderful things that we take for granted. And what's wonderful about Kansas City is that even though it's a big concrete jungle, there's also some really amazing parks in that city. There was a little bit of forethought when they were developing it, and Swope Park is massive. And a lot of the urban schools, are pretty close to that park, so it's not hard to get the kids out there, but because mom and dad or grandma or whoever are really busy and work all day, and transportation is what it is. These kids often are totally divorced of nature. And so I've gotten to do some really great in-school and schoolyard education with kids in the Kansas City, Missouri school district, but Greenworks is taking it like way beyond that and getting them out fishing and getting them out, tagging butterflies and just amazing stuff. Yeah. Incorporating science into interactions with nature and familiarizing and normalizing it,
Yeah.
It's so important.
That's great. And I think a lot of, at least when I was a kid in the school that I was at, I saw science as like chemistry.
Yeah.
And like
it felt bland.
You put this tube in here and something explodes, or it seemed also very intense, and I was like, there's no way that I can do this.
Yeah.
And then I've come to realize, science is a lot of different things. There's natural sciences, which are like really great, and it's a really great way to get kids involved into science and not have it be like this difficult mind-bending activity. It's like, here's grass, you know, layers of the forest, trying to describe things like that is very visual, which I think makes it a lot more simpler for a common person to understand, and then you can dive deeper in different ways if you want to dive deeper, and
I think so too.
This and that, but
field education is where it's at, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's why I've done a lot of different types of teaching, and I've taught a lot of different subjects, but my favorite thing is just to be outside teaching people about plants in the field, because I think I've taken some really great classroom botany classes, but you're right, they feel it's like reading stereo instructions. Really it can be pretty bland if you're not super passionate about it. It's like you're memorizing vocabulary and diagrams and formulas, and you're like, why am I learning this? But if you're outside learning about, plants are green because of photosynthesis, and this is what photosynthesis is, and this is how the plant uses, its environment to grow and then feed other animals, or feed animals. It's not an animal. That's pretty cool to learn in the field, but it's harder to learn on paper. So I kind of feel like field education is foundational, and then if you love it, you can dig deeper into
you can get to the cellular levels.
Yes, literally. In the classroom. And so I agree with you completely, and I think if we want people to reconnect in the field is how we're going to do that. For sure.
After hearing this, I really feel like with the future of how things are going with the world, I feel like, I mean, outdoor education, for one, schools are feeling like, I mean, it depends on the school, right? And what their accessibility is with the space that they have and what they can do with the kids, how many kids they have,
Right.
just that whole thing. But I feel like trying to have more time outside because of everything is becoming like more and more important, and that they're having classes outside. KU had classes outside.
Oh, I know.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of a bummer that we're not able to do as much of that, and it's not for the reasons you'd think. It's because we can't get students there. The transportation, like buses and vans, are the restriction, not the outdoor itself. I feel like, department by department might be different, but I feel like teachers would jump on teaching outside if we could make it inclusive, because the transportation is a barrier. So a lot of people are teaching outside and incorporating a lot of campus time, and that makes it easier, but that still would be difficult for people who are, are more mobily challenged, or or just can't get there as quickly, or they have a job and have to go from Kansas City to KU. So there's a lot of barriers. I'm really missing teaching outside for KU a lot. Hopefully I'll be able to do that again.
Yeah.
I teach field botany, and we had to cancel it this summer. Maybe next summer.
Yeah. You were the person that taught the summer field botany?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's a
I
great
almost
class.
took that class.
It was a lot of fun. All your friends were there, except for you,
Yeah. No, I think that's true.
It's a really, really fun class, and it's different every year. So I try to take students to all my favorite natural areas, and we get permission to visit private land, but then we see some of the more amazing public spaces in the area, and a lot of KU owns a lot of really pristine ecosystem. And so it's pretty lucky, but we didn't get to do it this summer.
Yeah.
And it feels like it's been so long, but it was just
man.
May. I know, it was like not that long ago.
I know.
But I totally get why it was canceled, but it's a bummer.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
It happens. Nobody knows anything. Well, we do, but it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's everybody's learning as we are going through this process.
Right.
So we kind of talked about community interaction and community support.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a really big part of what you do.
Yeah.
So maybe I feel like we talked about that on our walk a lot, but which is great.
Yeah.
But volunteer days and just Friends with the Caw, I feel like you collaborate with a lot of other community members.
Mm-hmm.
And how did all those things come about? That's really cool.
I don't know. I feel like people ask me a lot how I built. I don't even like to call it building a network, because it implies that I did it by myself. But how I created a collaboration that yields cool projects like this.
Yeah.
I think it's just being open-hearted and excited about what I do. And also sort of forcing people to let me spend time. So we collaborate with Grassland Heritage Foundation a lot, and I was on their board for a couple years, and they're always looking for people. So if you're interested in prairie stuff, that's a good way to start to network. Grassland Heritage Foundation.
Yeah.
Friends of the Caw, I started working with them because I met our riverkeeper Dawn in the Kansas Women's Environmental Network. We were on that board together. I guess boards are how I meet. Kansas Land Trust. I think Jerry Jost might just be the nicest person of all time.
Yeah.
And so everybody's immediately friends with Jerry. Do you remember how I met Jerry? I don't. I've always known Jerry. No, that's not true.
30 years.
I think once you're sort of, the prairie community is not very big,
Kansas isn't very big.
No, Kansas isn't big. And what's great about the Friends of the Caw relationship and why it's so meaningful to us is it reaches a larger audience than just prairie people or pollinator people. I mean, now you're talking about water people, river people, water quality people, health departments, state agencies. They hear you when you talk about prairie, but when you start talking about water in Kansas is a really big deal. And the prairie and the Kansas River are married, and they always have been. The Kansas River is a prairie river. I think it's either the longest or the second longest grassland river in the world. And it's like the drinking water source for over 800,000 Kansans. It's a big deal.
The Ogallala Aquifer.
Yes. That's
a big topic.
It's a big topic. And when Dawn and I sit down, we're both so passionate about what we do. We immediately knew we wanted to work on something together. And so we made it happen. That's just the kind of people that we are. And we're going to keep doing that for as long as we can. And once we started doing that work with Friends of the Caw, I think other community members recognized that we can pull off what we promise, and I think we needed to demonstrate that. And Friends of the Caw took a risk and did our first project with us. And now, people we've been collaborating with for a long time on smaller projects are, taking big leaps and doing bigger projects with us. And we're really excited about that. It helps us reach broader audiences,
Yeah.
I mean, people come out who have never been in prairies before, or landowners who don't know how to manage problems, like we were talking about Sericea lespedeza on our walk. I mean, we get landowners come out all the time who don't even realize that the species we're teaching them about and why we're removing it is something that's been a problem for them on their land for a long time, and now they know how to manage it in an ecologically sound way.
Yeah.
So it's like both community education and, important collaborations with nonprofits and government agencies and communities. But, and then beyond that, like stepping away and being able to recognize for a really, really small dollar figure compared to what like a big ecological firm would charge to do the same work on their own with no community involvement. For a much smaller number, we can work with the community, and they built it, and then they own it and they love it, and their hands were in the dirt. And all these organizations cared about it, and now they know about all those organizations. So it's like, why don't we always do it this way?
Yeah.
And so, and the reason we don't do it full time, and we hope to one day do it full time, is that it's all grant money, And so we have to write a grant and send it out to, a dozen different sources, and try to get funding for these amazing things. And that takes time.
Yeah.
And we're busy folks.
Yeah.
So the winter season is the grant writing season. It will start again before too long.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes.
I've written a grant, and it was weird.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? Oh, okay.
Every grant is different.
Yeah.
And I make it sound easy when I say that you can send it to everybody the same way, but you have to write a new grant for the same project over and over and over again. It's a different format, different, everybody, some are online, some are not, some are, really complicated, some are a couple of paragraphs, and
yeah.
you just you have to devote the time to it, and it's worth it in the end. It's totally worth it, but it's exhausting.
Yeah.
But,
I can tell.
Yeah.
A lot of this work, outdoor work, is mentally and physically draining.
Yeah.
And thank goodness we have winter.
Oh, I know. Well, and I used to get winters, like, I used to get to chill. Like, I would teach, but I would relax mostly. But that's not my life anymore. Dawn, the riverkeeper, and I were just talking about the other day that we used to have winter, and now we just work all the time. I don't know. I think it's sort of that we don't really have winter in Kansas anymore.
Yes.
Like, it only snows a couple times, and, it's only really, really cold for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
If we can be outside working, we are. And so we don't get winter like we used to.
Yeah. I've definitely noticed that, and it's just mild.
Yeah.
It's just very mild, and you can like you said, you can go outside, and like it's not you can layer up and be fine.
Exactly. And my toes aren't frozen. I'll be all right.
Yeah.
If I could be outside working, that's what I do, and so I don't spend as much time doing administrative stuff for the business or writing grants, and it gets kind of smashed into January. That's it.
Yeah.
It's the only really winter month that we have.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's spring and it's busy again.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for that, though. It's
Yeah.
good to be busy.
And I'm just happy that there's seasons.
Yeah.
And that it's not just
That's very
all...
Yeah.
Seasons are cool.
Yeah, seasons are fantastic. Fall is a wonderful season. But you can hear the cows.
Man. Hey.
Hey, cows. And we had a spring this year, too. I mean, and summer wasn't so bad.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, we had some pretty great seasons this year. And I'm so tired because of it. We didn't take any time off.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, I mean, we got so much done this year, though. Really. Yesterday, we planted someone's whole front yard to native plants. The entire
that's so cool.
front yard in Kansas City, Missouri.
Cool.
It's going to be really neat to drive by that place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you help out, like, let's say this person has this beautiful space in their yard, whatever, field, who knows. They can call you up and just be like, hey, Courtney, do you want to come native this?
Yeah. I mean, basically,
It's happened.
that's what we do. That's what we do. I mean, I always say we'll work with every native plant question, big or small, container gardens to, dozens of acres and hundreds of acres. My heart's sort of in restoring, native prairie and forest and wetland spaces because I'm an ecologist and I like big scale stuff.
Right.
But I work a lot with people doing urban landscapes, suburban landscapes, and like I joke about it, but like container gardens on balconies. A lot of people don't have green space, and they still want to have milkweed for the monarchs or pollinator food. And so we try to just meet people wherever they are. I think everybody can be a conservationist. You just have to figure out, what's the opportunity? And if they don't have green space, how can they do it in their community, And so we've done a lot of planting community gardens on city property and taking care of those and helping people do neighborhood gardens. And it's all rewarding. It's all important. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Where can one, find prairie plants for their spaces?
So I would say, your first stop should be to check with the nonprofits that do native plant sales because all of your purchases are donations to the cause. Mm-hmm. So Grassland Heritage Foundation and Deep Roots KC is sort of a collaborative group of a bunch of native plant growers up in Kansas City. And Monarch Watch right here on campus grows most of what they sell at their sale is native plants. And so, stop there. But if not, there's some really, really great native nurseries. We try to stop first at Happy Apples Farm in Tonganoxie. Patty is a friend of ours and grows up local ecotype seeds, which means that it's the genetics that are from right here. She lives in Leavenworth County, but I'll bring her seeds from Douglas County. She collects from her own prairie. I know that she gets donations from other people's prairies. And so she tries to grow Northeast Kansas plants, which I just love.
That's awesome.
Yeah. You can buy from, prairie plants from a lot of vendors online, like Minnesota or Iowa or Nebraska. And I still think that that's worth doing if you don't have any other option. But those are going to be genetics that are, their toolbox is for a different climate than ours. And so they may not be able to handle what Kansas is throwing at them. And we throw some weird curveballs. So our plants are super tough. Drought tolerant, flood tolerant, really hot summers, really cold winters. So it's good to have our genetics.
Yeah.
But Happy Apples is really great. If you're in Lawrence, check them out for sure if you just want to go in somewhere and buy a plant.
Yeah. Sometimes that's nice.
Yeah, it is. You miss if you go cold turkey into native plant gardening, which we did a really long time ago now, then you kind of miss the retail therapy of being able to just go into the big box store and buy, whatever calls your name. We don't do that anymore.
Yeah. See all these beautiful plants, be like, which one should I take home today?
Exactly. And we don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And sometimes I miss it, but if I go and visit Patty,
Yeah.
I usually leave with a couple $100 worth of plants.
Yeah.
And usually they're for someone else. Sometimes they're for me.
Yeah.
But I have to do that like once a month at least. And it makes me feel good. That every native plant you buy makes the world a better place is the way to think about it. When you buy a non-native plant, you're buying it for you. When you buy a native plant, you're buying it for the ecosystem.
Yeah. You're buying it for the future life.
That's right. And they're perennial. Most of what you're going to buy at these places are going to be really long-lived plants. So it's like garden smart, not hard.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Plant it once.
Yeah.
Then just enjoy it.
Yeah.
And you get that. As a food producer, you get that. I mean, you work mostly in annuals.
Yes.
And that's wonderful. But it's the hard way.
Yep.
Taking up a tomato plant every year, and then you have this giant bushel.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I was thinking about that at the house that I'm living at right now. I was like, oh my gosh, we have an at-home composting system, and we have this giant caged tomato plant. Is this really gonna break down in our pile?
Like woody at this
yeah,
point.
it's like, I don't know if I want to burn my dry tomato plant. That feels
Are
weird.
they hollow? You could use them as native bee nesting.
Right now, they are fully alive.
Okay,
But
when they're dead.
I'm thinking ahead.
I think if I've cut down some tomatoes, I think when they're woody, they're hollow on the inside, and native bees will use them to nest in over the winter.
Oh, that's great.
So you can just cut them into small pieces and stack them somewhere. And the bees
I'll
will
do
use
that.
them. Yeah.
We have space.
Yeah, see?
Yeah.
And then you can just compost the stick after the bees emerge in the spring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah,
yay.
see? Yeah, now
That's
you have
great.
a good use for
Oh my gosh.
Now you know.
Yeah.
We need perennial tomato plants. They need to get on that.
Right?
Why don't they have that figured out?
It should be a thing.
I know.
It should be a thing.
Well, and then the wild tomato species that are in our ecosystems are perennial. Like wild tomatillos, wild ground cherries. Those are perennial.
Yeah.
So why can't
we have a nice red slicer that's native?
Yeah,
what the heck?
come on. Or at least get it perennial.
Yeah.
Like what the Land Institute is doing with grains and getting perennial grain figured out.
Yeah.
Like we could figure out a perennial tomatillo because we have a perennial tomatillo. We just have to start choosing for bigger tomatillos. That's how we got to tomatoes and tomatillos anyway. So when did it stop being perennial?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Who's tracing this?
Who's doing this and why? Yeah. This is a podcast all by itself.
Yeah.
At
Give
least.
us some information.
Yeah.
Email us.
Give me some more information.
Yeah, totally. That's cool. Yeah, my roommate Maeve, who I know you've worked with.
Greatest person.
We were conspiring. We're like, all right, what native plants should we put in the front yard?
She knows.
Nobody has mowed the yard.
No.
Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Because we don't want it to be mowed. We're like, we're anti-mow, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like we can add some really nice things to the area.
Maeve knows I would give her anything. So I know she's listening. Maeve,
Yeah.
when you hear this, just come and get plants.
They're ready.
I purge in the fall. She knows that, so she needs to just come get plants. Yeah, you guys will just come
We'll add
shop
it to
here.
the checklist. Yeah.
Yeah.
How is the rest of your team doing? I know, like, when we reached out over email, you've expanded, which is great. I know Hannah, I think, if you're listening.
I have two Hannahs. The Hannahs. They're great. Hannah B, to protect her identity in case she doesn't want the world to know, has been with us for just over a year now. Fantastic person. Really, really hard worker and smart. And then we have another Hannah P, which is hard to tell the difference. That's why we don't call him that.
Yeah.
But she's been with us since June, and she's learning a lot, and she's great. Hard worker. And they have to be super patient with me. It's really hard to work with a small business that's as unpredictable and sort of seasonal, but like I was saying, we have work all the time. But we have big swings up and big swings down. You know, rainy weeks. I mean, it's hard to work for someone. You get this. If I can't be out in the field, they can't be out in the field.
Right.
And I'm like, sorry, I don't have any work for you this week. And that's really tough. And I know that one of my Hannahs works mostly farm jobs as well as this. And so for her, losing income from 3 different jobs for a whole week has got to be tough. So I'm pretty grateful for how flexible and tough they are. Because there's just times when I can't work them.
Yeah.
That's really hard.
It is. Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. But at the same time, I don't know how they feel, but I'm always grateful for a rainy couple of days, especially unplanned rainy couple of days. Just try to get caught up and maybe sleep in one of the days. It's nice, and I'm sure they feel that way too.
Yeah.
But then the rent is due, and I get it. I get it.
Yeah. I used to farm and also work in the service industry, which was such a weird dynamic because, I'm in the field by myself, picking all the tomatoes, doing whatever. And then I'd be usually alone, I'd have coworkers, but I'd have like 4 or 5 coworkers. Yeah. And so it's just like, a lot of alone time, which is great. And I love it. And I can still talk to people. And then I'd go and serve tables or, do this and that. And it was just like so much
people over
so many people.
Oh, I know.
It's like, oh my gosh, and it was crazy to like have that both sides. And now it's really interesting to like have to focus on, farming. And then also now I'm like really getting into more other side gigs.
Yeah.
And like I think somebody recently called it like the gig economy.
Yeah.
Of just like continuous to do gigs. I'm sure you can all relate to this.
Yeah.
But it was just like, and honestly, like,
oh my gosh.
Some of these couches, I feel like they're screaming at each other.
They
like,
do that at 4
a.m.,
just so you know. They always do that. In the dark, in the middle of the night.
Oh my gosh.
I think they're trying to call out to each other. There's babies over there, and they play.
Yeah, I mean, they are, like, fairly spread out, but I don't know how big their paddock is.
It's not very big.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of unnecessary screaming.
And they just showed up like a month ago. So.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they're part of this whole calf-cow thing. Yeah. And so they're food, but we don't eat them, and so they're our friends, and they get to be our friends for a while.
Yeah.
And we just get to, at least they get some prairie-adjacent grass to snack on.
Yeah.
And life is quiet out here, and there's not a bunch of them in there. They're not in mud, and it's not Dodge City over there.
Oh yeah, no, it's not.
So it's, their lives are relatively good.
Yeah. Oh, I see the baby. Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, they run.
Yeah.
They scamper around. They're pretty cute.
Yeah.
But I think they run, and then either mom yells at them or they yell at mom.
Hey.
And then they get back together.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Cool.
Sidebar.
Yeah, it's okay.
But no,
everyone's curious about the
cows. The cow. If you hear screaming,
it's not us. I think that's just the way of the world. Getting out of that and getting into the community. It all comes back down to the community.
It does. That's why we love Lawrence so much.
Yeah, and it's been so hard. Like I've had so many thoughts of like, should I leave?
Yeah.
Should I stay? And I think I'm gonna stay because why would I leave a place that like supports me and just supports the community, not only just me but like everybody.
It's a pretty special place to be a farmer or a conservationist of any type, sort of a green jobs person. Obviously in Kansas it's an island, but in the world, it's a special place to be. We care a lot about each other. We have a pretty tight community and lift each other up in ways that, national news kind of ways. We are a really great example for the rest of the world, I think. And there's always somebody who sucks in every community, but Lawrence does a really good job of seeing past differences and lifting people up just because they're your neighbor or part of your community.
Yeah.
We're slightly out as introverted people. We are very happy out here with the cows. But it's really nice to dip back into the community and see our people and still be part of that community. Because I think you're always a part of Lawrence, even if you leave.
Yeah.
People just love you and remember you.
Yeah. Like North Village folks.
Yeah.
Everybody really says they live in Lawrence.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're North Village of Lawrence.
Okay. It's different. Yeah. We lived in North Lawrence, you know that, for a few years before we moved out here. So we've been slowly moving out of town for 7 years.
Right.
And I really like it out here because I can just walk into the back prairie, to get our downtime. But it's also 10 minutes from town. And so
the drive is really great.
It's beautiful. It's like driving through, I can't remember, one of our friends was saying, this feels like you're driving around in Colorado when you come up those hills. Yeah. It's not Colorado, obviously, but it's like, it's hilly.
We're in Kansas.
And there's forest.
Yeah.
And it's like you can separate yourself from all of that busyness. That 10-minute drive is cathartic for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We always see wildlife up that drive, and you know, and you get to drive past nice prairie and
Yeah. The
and
field
memories
station.
and the field station, and
Yeah.
it's pretty great.
Yeah.
And there was strategy in living up here because force isn't the right word, but it encourages, it kind of requires that we drive through downtown Lawrence to get anywhere, and that's those are the businesses we want to support, and those are where our friends work, and those are, you know, that's where our community is, and so we have to try really hard to go past it. Like you'd have to have a lot of time to drive past downtown Lawrence to go somewhere, and so even if it was a day where we were like, I just need the cheapest thing.
Yeah.
Which isn't what you're going to get always in downtown Lawrence.
Right.
But you're going to get the best thing.
Right.
And the best experience.
Right.
And so, you know, we hit up our local hardware store, our local restaurant, our local anything before we drive, you know, over to Iowa and hit
Past 23rd.
past 23rd Street.
Yeah.
And hit up, you know, national or international chains that you won't feel affect this community. And so...
Yeah.
There's a lot of strategy in what we did, and
Yeah.
we're really happy with the outcome, I think.
Yeah.
Now we
Great
just have to-
strategic planning.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
yeah.
So you knew this question was coming.
Yeah.
But what has both of your favorite Prairie moment been?
I think Ryan should share his first.
I should.
Yeah. Or do you want me
I
to?
don't know what my favorite one is. But
Or just
there's
a positive
very
one.
many memorable ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Share-
I don't
share
know.
a couple
Probably
then.
just standing up on the hills in the Conso Prairie and like looking at just the vastness of prairie.
Yeah.
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 Just all the butterfly milkweed out there.
Oh gosh. If you want to see big
Such a-
butterfly milkweed,
Yeah.
go to Consa.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But it feels like Ryan's right there. I think the vastness, your smallness, is so amplified there. And even though,
It's also smaller too, though. Like,
yeah,
Yeah.
the whole
Right.
prairie is very short.
Yeah.
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 Um,
Totally.
But yeah, that's a really good point. Anything else you want to share about Prairie that you love? What's your favorite thing about our Prairie? What's your most memorable?
There you go.
Our Prairie is called
That our
Blazing
Prairie.
Star Prairie.
Yeah.
What's your most memorable Blazing Star Prairie moment
Hmm.
so far?
I don't know. Probably the ladies' tresses all over.
We have native orchids all over. Ladies' tresses, orchids.
Oh my gosh.
And it was
They're
such a
pretty
cool
awesome,
surprise. And we have, I think, 3 species because there's, I think 4. There's, I'm as an embarrassed botanist, I can't remember. I think there's 4 species of ladies' tresses, and we have 3 of them. A spring blooming one and 2 fall blooming ladies' tresses. And so we had ladies' tresses all year. It was really cool.
That's so cool. I've never seen such a thing.
Well, I should have pointed them out when we were walking around.
It's okay. It's okay.
I was tripping over them.
Yeah.
I have like a billion, but the one that always comes to mind is when I was doing my master's research in a prairie inside of Shawnee Mission Park, which is in Johnson County. The most visited park in the state, and you should go. It's worth visiting. But I'm always alone. It's like you talk about alone in the field, and it's quiet, and the solitude is beautiful. And when you're alone in the prairie, things happen differently than when you're walking around with someone else talking and crunching and yelling at your dog.
Yeah.
So I was taking data, counting plants, and I heard a rustle, and you learn to be nervous about rustling when you're by yourself in the
Yes.
outside.
Yes.
Sometimes it's a mama deer, sometimes it's, scary things.
A
But
snake.
usually, sometimes it's a snake, and that's cool, but not right next to me.
Yeah.
But this time it was a skunk, and I was so happy. I just sat down on my butt, and all you can see of the skunk is the tip of its tail
Oh my
as it's walking
gosh.
through the tall grass, and it was just sniffing around. And we shared the prairie for a while, and it was magical. And I know it
Cute.
sounds crazy, but skunks are amazing.
Yes.
And I've had a lot of really great interactions with wildlife out in the prairie, and some painful interactions and some scarier interactions, but mostly really wonderful and magical. And you only really get that if you're quiet if you go out there with the intention to sit still.
Yes.
You know?
And I feel like usually that is done best when you're with either one or two people.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, like, the third footstep, there has to be someone that has a heavy foot.
I
You know what I
know.
mean?
Yeah.
And it's just like, someone's going to step on that tree, and then everybody's going to hear him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never really
That's
see
great.
snakes in the prairie, and I think it's because I walk around like a bison. I'm so loud when I
Yeah.
walk around. And prairie's really hard to be quiet in.
Yeah.
So you have to just sit still.
Yeah.
You really do.
Definitely.
But yeah.
Thanks for sharing your prairie moments.
Thank you.
So just to wrap up, what are some ways that the community and anybody who listens to this podcast can connect with y'all?
If you do social media, we have a Facebook page, Native Lands LLC, I think is the easiest way to find it. Or you can look for Courtney Masterson, that's me. And it shows it as my one and only employer right now. And then we don't have a website because I don't know when I'm going to have time to build a website, but it's going to happen one day. But you can find the volunteer day opportunities on our social media, but also, and we have an Instagram, sorry, as an aside, but through our collaborators' social media pages and websites too. So Friends of the Cause website has our work days on it. Grassland Heritage Foundation has work days. When we schedule them, the Kansas Land Trust website will have our work days.
Yeah.
So there's so many different ways. Just find our collaborators or find us.
Facebook events.
Facebook events.
Oh, you're also, I wrote down that you're doing a webinar. I was kind of excited about that. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to join.
And I don't know. I do a lot of online education. So the best way to hear about I share those all over my Facebook page. That's a good way to hear about online education from Courtney. I did just do a talk for the Kansas Biological Survey that's on their YouTube page. And I did a talk for the KU Natural History Museum that's on their YouTube page.
Cool.
So if you want to hear about, or, like walking around Prairie and talking about our projects and meeting native plants, I do a lot of that stuff through videos now. It's a good way to find information. And usually I flash, flyers about our work days.
Yeah.
So.
Visual learners unite through YouTube.
Yeah.
And outside.
This is the first season, the first time in my life I've ever made videos on purpose for an audience. And so I'm kind of ridiculous. I'm not good at it.
Yeah.
I'm way embarrassed. And usually I'm shooting them by myself.
Yeah.
And so it's very awkward.
It's really hard to get used to.
It is.
Yeah.
I'm getting better though.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do podcasts.
Yeah.
About plants. I've been trying to get the Hannahs.
Yeah.
Because they're really good podcast listeners, and now I have a podcast to listen to.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you can listen to this.
Yeah,
It's gonna be fun. You're gonna listen to yourself.
It's gonna be so great. It's awesome.
Who knew we sounded like this?
Hopefully not too bad.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for joining me today and talking with me. It was really great to learn and talk about the prairie and everything and listen to the cows and
wherever Badger went.
Who
knows?
Put 'em away.
The cats. Your cat made a little appearance in the window.
They
and
sing songs.
waved.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, folks, that was the rest of the interview for this episode with Native Lands, Courtney and Ryan. It was such a treat. I had such a good time. They're such kind and generous people and are doing such awesome work where they are. I'm so happy that we got to spotlight them on this episode. And I hope that you gain some further knowledge of another awesome activity and group and community happening here in Kansas. Like I have said in further episodes, past episodes, my Instagram is @Prairie Ramblings, and I post lots of fun photos and things and information about farming and also about the podcast. The video clip to one of the nature sounds will be in my post about this episode. So check it out, and hopefully I will see you soon. Enjoy this lovely fall weather. Adios.